My friends, what we are seeing happening in Bolivia is not a legitimate popular protest, no, and it's even less a demonstration for rights. What you see on the streets of La Paz is the agony of a system that lost the vote, lost legitimacy, and now only has brute violence as a tool for survival. Imagine a cornered animal that, realizing it has no way out, decides to bite anyone who comes near. Is this animal the Latin American Marxist left? For decades, this system was supported by three pillars that seemed unshakable: the abundant money from commodities, a seductive social narrative, and most importantly, legal impunity guaranteed by rigged courts. But Venezuela's money has dried up, Cuba is suffering an energy collapse, and Russia is too busy with its own problems to send help. And the result? They are losing elections all over the continent. From Argentina to Bolivia, people are saying they've had enough of the left. The collapse of this three-part support structure forced leaders like Evo Morales to finally drop the disguise of social leaders and take on the role that was always theirs behind the scenes, that of the head of criminal factions. The real consequence is that politics in Latin America has stopped being a battle of ideas and has become a war for territory. And what is happening today in Bolivia? Bolivia is the testing ground for what they intend to do across the entire continent when power finally slips out of their hands, including in Brazil. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like the video since it takes a lot of work. Pay close attention to Evo Morales. Yes, the man who, when you look at him, you wouldn't think much of. Many people here in Brazil used to say he's just an indigenous leader. That same indigenous man now has an arrest warrant, one issued for crimes that turn your stomach. Words we can't say here so the algorithm doesn't sync our video, but they involve adults and children. You know what I mean, human trafficking. Where he is accused of keeping a group of children, justifying it as a cultural custom of his tribe. Its perversion elevated to a state dogma. And what do you do when justice finally comes knocking at your door? He didn't surrender, he dug in. Evo Morales refused to face the law and instead called in a goon squad funded by drug trafficking. He took over cities, blocked roads, and now demands the resignation of the elected president. Rodrigo Paez, a center-right leader who committed the crime of trying to restore order and cut the subsidies that fueled the corrupt union machine. Common crime has become the final refuge of the ideological politician, because when they are rejected at the polls, they turn to the territorial strongholds controlled by the coca trade. And this shows that the Latin American left was never about democracy. For them, democracy is just a bus they take to get to power. As soon as they get there, they try to puncture the tires so no one else can get on. This sounds a lot like Brazil, doesn't it? We are defending democracy and arresting all our opponents, censoring those who criticize us. All to save the bus, which belongs only to them. And Morales' desperation is the desperation of the entire São Paulo Forum. They know that if the law works for her, it will work for everyone. The mask has fallen and what remains is the ugly face of organized crime disguised as revolution. And you need to understand the deep connection between the so-called peasants who defend Morales and the logistics of international crime. Because in Bolivia, the peasant is often a euphemism for the coca grower. In Bolivia, peasants are not marching for agrarian reform. They are marching to protect the drug export routes that finance the political project of the São Paulo Forum. And the tentacles of the São Paulo Forum are not only in Colombia, Bolivia, or in Venezuela and Cuba. They were created right here in Brazil. And that's the most serious part, because the heads supposedly would be here today. Today, there is an organic symbiosis between ideological militancy and criminal logistics. The grassroots militancy, which was once driven by promises of social justice, has been replaced by a professionalized criminal apparatus. The goal is no longer to win elections through persuasion, but to make countries ungovernable for anyone who does not belong to the brotherhood. They create chaos to sell submission as the solution. If you don't vote for them, they bring the country to a halt, loot airports, and surround the presidential palace until you surrender out of exhaustion or fear. They've already tried to do this in São Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, and they do this in the northeast and north of the country. They just don't do it in some other Brazilian states because the governors have used brute force to solve the problem. Just like Trump is doing in Venezuela, Mexico, and the Middle East. just like Nayib Bukele did in El Salvador. Imagine this applied on a national level. We would probably have a war here at home. They use the power of drug trafficking to paralyze the economy and force political concessions. That's what the American Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, called a coup attempt financed by crime. And as we said, this is not a problem exclusive to Bolivia. It's the way to maintain power. Brazil, Colombia, and Chile are all on the same radar. The difference is that this time the sheriff is coming back to town. Because the report released by the White House right after Lula's visit is hair-raising when it comes to terrorism. Now it also includes terrorist organizations and drug cartels. Because while the left was entrenching itself in crime, the White House was writing the operations manual. The Trump doctrine will no longer treat drug trafficking as a public health issue or a matter for local police. The new guideline is clear. Classify the Latin American gangs and cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, the FTOs. This manual is publicly available in PDF format and you can access it on our platform without censorship. This change in terminology changes everything. If they are terrorists, the American response stops being diplomatic and becomes a global military and intelligence response. This gives the United States government the legal justification to carry out precision operations, drone strikes, cyber warfare, and total financial blockades against any group or government that collaborates with these organizations. The sanctuary that the São Paulo Forum offered to crime has its days numbered. If crime is elevated to the status of terrorism, the response no longer accepts bureaucratic borders that used to protect these dictators. Trump's plan is to completely cripple the cartels' logistics, destroy their finances, and eliminate their leaders, even if they are hiding behind political positions. And that's where Lula trembles. The goal is to choke off the system completely. Trump wants the cost of collaborating with drug trafficking to be so high that no Latin American politician dares to answer the phone when a cartel boss calls. Radars, espionage, satellites, all focused on these leaders. Now let's bring this reality into your daily life. If the United States government classifies groups like the PCC and Comando Vermelho as terrorist organizations, what does that mean for the Brazilian government? What about a government that negotiates with these groups, avoids operations in slums dominated by crime, or welcomes drug lords' wives into ministerial offices? The pressure won't just be rhetorical, my friends. It will be economic, it will be diplomatic. There is a direct parallel between the fear that Evo Morales feels in Bolivia and the nervousness of the Brazilian political elite with the rise of the right and the approach of 2026. Do they know that the tide has turned? Has the unconditional support that the Biden administration gave to certain Latin American narratives evaporated? Now the criterion is American national security. And if Brazil is seen as a safe haven for narco-terrorism, the consequences for our economy and our sovereignty will be devastating. The system is cornered. Are they seeing the noose tighten? Is Bolivia a mirror of what happens when the regime loses control of the narrative and has to resort to brute force? Lula's desperation to defend dictatorships like Venezuela's or to ignore the coups of his allies reflects the thinking of someone who knows that the next target of the continental purge could be him. The São Paulo Forum is in survival mode, and a regime in survival mode is capable of any atrocity to stay in power, including taking down videos like these. Because at the time of this video, Lula has just signed another decree to control social media. Bolivia is being used as the laboratory, but the remedy is on its way to the whole continent. The awakening of Latin American nations against the criminal Marxist yoke is a process that can't be reversed anymore. The system tried to turn us into numbers, tried to erase our identity, and tried to sell us out to organized crime in exchange for power, but they failed. The people have awakened, and the external support they had is being replaced by a doctrine of zero tolerance. The future of Latin America will be decided by our ability to distinguish between real politics and crime disguised as ideology. The Latin sanctuary is being dismantled. The financial and military squeeze on narco-terrorism will force each leader to choose a side. There will be no more room for sitting on the fence. Either you are with order and sovereignty, or you are with chaos and crime. Where will you be when the system collapses? This is the question that won't go away. Will you be a passive spectator or a conscious citizen who understands the gears of power? The elite wants you to be afraid, but information is the only antidote to terror. Comment below, order or chaos? I want to know who here realizes that neutrality is no longer an option. Now, what we discuss here is real geopolitics, the kind that the mainstream media tries to hide under layers of political correctness. If you want access to raw and in-depth data like this full document released by the White House, I'll ask my team to attach it to our platform so you can download it and understand that things go much deeper. Link in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the QR code that appears on your screen. Our intelligence bunker is a community with more than 3,000 analysts who help fund this truth so it reaches you. And for those who are looking for real culture free from whining and ideological agendas of woke culture, check out our series and movies channel. We're currently talking about 3 fantastic series without all that politically correct talk or activism. Bringing good stuff to you guys, hard-hitting movies and series. Yeah, and right now, taking advantage of what's happening in the world, we're recommending 3 special series. So click the link in the video description and also on the card that's going to pop up here on the screen. Support our series and movies channel. Let's help that channel grow, shall we? Let's boost that channel, so go there now, okay? Guys, the most anticipated moment to shield your mind has arrived. That's right, I'm Shimon Oliveira and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell and leave a like. Also, share it with your friends. See you later.